actually found out this morning that I was supposed to make some introductory remarks as well, so please bear with me if I'm not entirely prepared for this. I thought this was going to be purely a debate session. But nonetheless, thank you for inviting me. Just as a little disclaimer, or to be absolutely clear with you, our association does not just represent GDSs, but it also represents travel agents with what we call a high utilization of technology, meaning online travel agencies and online TMCs. So my members are Amadeus, Sabre, Travelport, as well as some of the big online travel brands that you all know: Expedia, LastMinute.com, eBookers, eDreams, Apollo, and so on. I will try to keep it brief because, as I was telling Lars earlier, I can talk about these topics until the cows come home. I think we live in a very, very interesting time in this travel industry. We have a number of factors that are causing a transformation. Some may call it revolution. I think the airline industry would love to see a revolution. Others call it evolution. I think it's inherent in humankind that we evolve rather than have revolution. When you look at our value chain, I think what is interesting to see is that some of the boundaries that were traditionally there are starting to break down. We used to have a supplier community: airlines, hotels, car rental companies, rail. We used to have the GDS, which was the transaction aggregator, and then we had the travel agent. Those boundaries are breaking down, and we have to be honest about it. I think technology has been an accelerator in bringing those boundaries. So travel agents, or online travel agents, are at the same time also becoming a type of distribution aggregator. And the direct connects between travel agents and suppliers, to an extent, manage to bypass distributors. And all of that is, in fact, largely thanks to technology. I'd like to take up a point. I haven't really structured this too systematically. I just want to put out a couple of points for thought out there, and then we can, Jenny is very good at distilling the important issues out of that, so I'll leave that up to John. John mentioned earlier the cost versus the value of distribution. I think it's a very, very fascinating debate. Our supplier community, and first and foremost the airlines, have, in my view, been much too focused on the cost of distribution, and purely looking at what it costs to distribute a ticket, without qualifying the value of it, the yield of it, without qualifying the individual customer. The bean counters among the airline executives have focused very much on cost. And we have to face it, it's been an the airline industry has been an industry which has been subject to numerous pressures over the last years. They have had great trouble staying in business. I think we see some improvement. I think consolidation has led to better operational results in the airline industry. So we may see their rhetoric change a little bit as well in the future. What we always like to focus on is the value of distribution. What is the added value of bringing a specific customer in contact with a specific supplier? And just to give you an example, and I won't talk too much about NDC, but in the NDC discussion, there had been a lot of focus on the ancillary revenue derived, or the additional revenue derived from ancillary products such as seat assignments and speedy boarding and Wi-Fi on board, and extra luggage, and so on and so forth. And I was at an event by Farologic. Some of you may know this company. They claim to have been one of the early adopters of the new NDC standard. And they were bandying about these massive amounts of additional revenue they claimed that ancillaries would bring. We were coming from $50 billion. Now the most recent number I saw was $130 billion a year across the airline industry. And I asked one simple question. I said, has anybody ever thought about how much of that revenue is actual incremental revenue? Because preceding the emergence of ancillaries, what the airlines have done is chop up the product and make it into a base product plus ancillaries. And or at least they claim, and in many cases I think it's true, the price of the base product has gone down. So whereas your ticket would cost 200 euros in the past, you've made it into 150 euros for the base fare, and then you're selling ancillaries for 30, and you say, I've made 30 euros extra revenue. No, you've made 20 euros less revenue. So nobody could answer the question how much is actually incremental revenue. So, you know, this puts things a little bit in perspective. Another myth that's being created about our distribution channel, and I agree that with Jelko that, you know, the GDSs are definitely on your side. I think we're all on the same side here in trying to demonstrate the value of our distribution chain, distribution. One of the other myths is commoditization. The airlines are saying, you GDSs and travel agents, by focusing on schedule and price, have caused the airline product to commoditize, to be just about a seat to travel from A to B. I don't think that's right. The ones that have commoditized the airline product are the customers, because they demanded to go from A to B. And you have obviously, you have a diversification of customers. You have the customer that is purely focused on price. You have another group of customers that is purely focused on schedule, wants to be able to travel as efficiently as possible in relation to his or her time schedule. And then you have the value seeker, the business executive who needs to have a flat bed because he needs to be, when he arrives to Singapore at 6 a.m. in the morning, he needs to be in his office there at 8 and have an important meeting. So that diversification has come, it's a customer demand. And the commodity that many customers demand, we haven't created that commodity. It's the customers that have forced the airlines to provide value for money options for transportation. And I would even turn it around. The airlines always accuse us of commoditizing their product. I would turn this around. I think together we as a value chain have to an extent been the kingmakers of the airline industry of the 21st century. Would we have, when you look at an A380 going from Frankfurt to Dubai on to Sydney, of those 600 seats, let's say, 400 seats are economy seats. A lot of these people are students, backpackers, people traveling home to see their family. We are filling those seats. We're also, helping the airlines fill the premium seats. But we are filling the seats that actually help the airlines make a bulk of their revenue. So without commoditization, in a sense, we wouldn't have the airline industry that we have today, which starts to make money, by the way. And in fact, we probably wouldn't have many of the airlines that we do have today. Where would Emirates be without our distribution? And I think that, that value proposition, the value we have been bringing over the last decades, and we will continue to bring, needs to be highlighted. And I think together we need to become better at telling that very, very positive and important story.